He's the unicorn. Really had his finger on the pulse in every way.
You're a virtuoso.
All his records are brilliant. He has the gift of creating design. Red music is woven into the fabric of how we exist.
Prince was definitely the start of so many things that we consider modern. For instance, the internet. The first time I was able to download a record, it was a Prince record.
バカだよね VC 何の才能もないくせに VC だから それ無理だよ
American story of a genius career. He was so shy, he could not look at the audience.
He was the most humble badass.
そんな当たってる感じじゃないよ
There was nobody else like Prince. It sounds like a cliche, but who else can you compare him to? You can't.
He had a unique way of saying things, so he always stood out.
He had a sound for the human experience.
He was pronounced deceased at 10:07. We have identified him as Prince Rogers Nelson.
The sudden and unexpected death of Prince stuns the world. Questions and rumors begin to spread as the quiet pain of disbelief sets in for his family, friends, and fans. The world mourns a legend. Just like that, he's gone. In many ways, the songs sung in the fields became the hymns sung in the church, which turned into the blues, which led to the birth of jazz. Out of this post-war generation sprouted a new sound that was a culmination of what had come before it. The arrival of the 1950s would mark a shift in the course of music and go from the sweet show tunes and love songs by the classic crooners of the 1940s to the hip-thrusting, guitar-shredding, piano-blazing rock and roll stars of the mid-1950s. While many communities enjoyed this new Ed Sullivan age of convenience, other neighborhoods and families across the country struggled just to make ends meet. Nowhere was this more evident than for those living on the north side of Minneapolis.
What I do recall about growing up in North Minneapolis, there was a close-knit community. The collective notion of we was very important.
Between 1940 and 1970, more than 5 million African Americans moved from the South to northern industrial cities in what came to be known as the Great Black Migration.
But I mean, our story of migration is the story of our existence in America. How did black folks get to Minneapolis? So where did it come from? Well, you got the Mississippi River there. So the Mississippi goes from New Orleans and as far north as Minneapolis. So the migration of black folks, so people went north for those jobs, but they didn't go east, west, they went north.
Prince's father, John Nelson, was a jazz musician who came from Louisiana to Minneapolis to perform and ended up marrying a jazz singer named Mattie Della Shaw Baker. Miles Davis released his album titled The Birth of Cool, and not long after, on June 7th, 1958, Prince Rogers Nelson was born. Prince's father played piano in a jazz group called the Prince Rogers Trio. As a young child, Prince showed interest in wanting to learn the piano, but his father had little time or patience for this. He was to be the only musician in his family.
If an American, because his skin is dark, cannot eat lunch in a restaurant open to the public, if he cannot vote for the public officials who represent him, if in short he cannot enjoy the full and free
Raised on the north side of Minneapolis, Prince would grow up keenly aware of just how divided his world was.
I noticed that
まあフランスのルーブから始まってる
crazy
の
and I realized that it was the moment when Kennedy was assassinated.
From Dallas, Texas, President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time.
My first 10 years was the turbulent 1960s. You go from Negro to colored to black. You're asking yourself, like, okay, what we gonna be called next?
I did see a lot. Being born and raised on the north side of Minneapolis, Plymouth Avenue was the main thoroughfare through there, which is where some of the protests and so-called riots took place in North Minneapolis.
The biggest challenge was racism in North Minneapolis. It was, I think, more prominent than it was in the South. Being here in Minneapolis, you really didn't know what was safe.
Growing up during the 1960s affected the young prince.
Back in the day, it was dangerous if you were from St. Paul and you were hanging out in Minneapolis, so you could get beat up or even killed.
What is unfortunate about the whole thing is that he, like I, was born in the Midwest. Chicago and Minneapolis, those are some of the most racist places.
Led by Reverend Martin Luther King, want to maintain their human dignity. Let us all work together for freedom, for liberty, and equality.
I kind of thought it would be different here, but the discrimination here was just as foul.
The people that I found in the community, their parents had came here looking for a so-called better life. And what they found was the same challenges.
In 1966, we were downtown at the Opportunity Parade like we normally would go. We also participated in it. And this particular year, the police attacked a 14-year-old girl for no reason at all, no crime committed, just watching the parade. That led into the first rebellion in Minneapolis by black people. And black people began to fight in downtown Minneapolis, all the way up Washington Avenue, all the way to Plymouth Avenue, where the fight went on into the night.
And out of the shadows steps a boxer. A 7-time Golden Glove winner named Harry Spike Moss.
You know, Spike was somebody that was in the community that everybody knew. We all knew him growing up. He is a freedom fighter.
And even though the street was full when that went down, with people watching and begging and asking and shouting, the 8 of them policemen still continue to beat that young man to the ground and still shot in front of witnesses. And he's still going to try to play it off and say he shot himself.
He's what makes North Minneapolis so special.
When the first rebellion came in 1966, first time we ever seen the mayor come to North Minneapolis. And one of the questions that was asked, what would make things better? And the young people said a place of their own where they could be together and have fun and enjoy life. And they gave us a building over here. And the children on the north side, they gutted it and helped remodel it. And we opened the building and they said we should name it. And one of my childhood friends named Clarence Benford Jr., he named it The Way. We said, the way what? The way out. The way to a new day.
And they found this building. They were able to raise enough money to actually purchase it. And they turned it into a community center. And it was a place where you could not only go and play basketball and pool and ping pong, things that obviously Prince grew into a lifelong love of. It was a place where you could get education. They had classes on like African history and cultural history, and they had a music room. Some people in the neighborhood donated instruments. They created this little rehearsal room at the Way, and it became this incubator for this whole generation of kids like Prince, Morris Day, Andre Simone, all of these young kids that were just starting to get this interest in music. They just were able to kind of have a space to hang out and, you know, fumble around with instruments, figure out where they wanted to be in a band, and form their own group.
There was a brother here that did jazz. His name was Bobby Lyle. He was the best jazz musician that we had produced at the time. He went to Japan and participated in the Yama organ contest. You win a $10,000 organ and a record deal. When he came back, it was congratulations, Bobby. But please understand, there will never be no little Bobbies if you don't help us produce them. What are you talking about? We're talking about a music school for our children, that they can come, no cost to them. We need you. Why do you need me? Because jazz musicians play music at levels that no other people play. We need our children to be able to play at that level, read and write music. Jazz musicians on the average play 6 to 7 instruments. We want our children to play a multitude of instruments. We need you. We thought about it and we started our school.
From 1966 to 1985, the Way served as a community center for over thousands of young children in the North Minneapolis area.
When we talk about the Way, you have Boys and Girls Club, the YMCA, all these kinds of things, but they have a box they fit you in. The key is that the Way were not boxable people. We had a lot of vision. We wanted to go places. We wanted to do things, but the Way was the foundation for the success of our community. You got to give. Somewhere you got to stop giving to yourself and give to others. Prince got to where he was because of the support he got.
The music thing, from the Way, the North Side, everything.
At the Way, and you were around trusted adults who would guide you and lead you.
This one moment of tension and unrest ended up spawning this space that ended up being so important to all these kids. When you think about, how the Minneapolis sound was developed, that political history is absolutely intertwined.
Out of those groups that of kids that came through, the group that went to the top was called the Young Players. They were getting offers, they just weren't ready to go. So when it was their turn, each group has to reach back and help teach the next group. And out of that, we developed all those groups that we put on the street. The baddest group that ever came out of here was the Family.
The Family, led by Sonny Thompson, Sonny T of the NPB.
Sonny Thompson is left-handed, plays the guitar and bass upside down. The only guy I know born with perfect pitch. Prince, when he graduated, Sonny was the lead teacher, and Sonny was the best musician we ever produced. The Family used to be playing outside way different spots, and wherever we played at, Prince would be on the side of the stage like this, or just be like this, right where Sonny is, just sitting like this. Prince was like a sponge, a magnet.
We were kids, with the help of Spike too, we seen a lot.
In the back room of the Way, there was always some band playing back there, and we as little kids, they were rock stars to us because we were fixated on music, right? And the Black community is really a musical community. And then when you have these musicians coming through, and they look like you.
Prince started going to the Way in 1970 at the age of 12. It would prove to be one of the key influences in his life, both as a musician and a performer.
Prince, what I seen especially was his love of music. Even at 12 years old, he'd be the first one to the class to look up at me and say, Spike, we got class today? Yes, we do. This is a funny thing about music. What separates you is your desire. They were sliding from rock and roll into soul.
And so it's really easy to say, Prince, we're making money. Got another guitar spot open for you. Come on and do this.
And that's why it was different. We took kids and made them play better than adults.
He brought this model in who taught us how to walk. Wow, we're going to have to wear those monkey suits. And then once Spike explained to us, no, you're going to do this because you're going to learn evening wear and business attire, and you're going to like it. What do I have on today?
What they really focused on was not just, okay, you sing, it's the entire package, how you dress, how you look, it's the show.
And even when he had his guitar, he'd hold it by the neck, and he'd be the first one there, ready to go. Then he'd be one of the last to leave. And that's why he got to play with the older boys in the Family. Because he was ready. The band of Prince's choice was called Grand Central.
We lived in the projects, North Minneapolis. And we all listened to the same music. That's something that I remember being a part of growing up at that time.
Prince was an annoying little joker.
At home, the tension was growing between Prince and his father, John Nelson. Despite their volatile relationship, when his parents split up, Prince opted to go live with his father. That is, until his father caught him in bed with a girl and threw him out of the house. That is when Prince moved around to friends' homes and eventually into the basement of his best friend, Andre Simone.
It was Linda.
いや、まっちゃんだけ僕はわかる。笑かせようとするのが本当につまんないから。いいけどね、別にそのビジネスは否定しないけど。いらんねや、
My mother knew Prince's dad and his mother. So that made it easier for him when Prince moved in and lived with us. When my mother talked to his mother, said, you know, if it's all right with you, he can stay here. And so we started living.
People talk a lot about Andre Anderson's mom, Bernadette. She was a huge figure in Prince's early life, and that was absolutely her agenda with all of those kids.
People loved my mother. So. Plus, they knew she ruled with a heavy hand. So they knew there would be no shenanigans at Bernadette's house. And you had to go to school. So even when both Andre and Prince had to go to school, Prince was going to Central and Andre was going to North. One of the things he did when he graduated was give my mother his diploma, as he credited her with really pushing him and making him finish school. Andre and Prince started out sharing rooms, and then they didn't get along so well. And then they decided Prince would go down the basement and make a little room there. He just never went home. And then pretty soon he was getting school clothes with us. You know, a year went by, and then another year, and then he just became, you know, part of the family.
Grew up on the north side, went to school with Prince. Morris Day is my cousin. Back then, he was sick. He would fight if you called him Prince. I used to have to take piano lessons. So at a certain time every day, I had to come in the house and practice piano. So if we were playing outside, when it was time for me to come in and practice, they would come sit on the porch. So I had the music and a little portable record player that you could, you know, tote from over the room. And so we're on our porch listening to Tighten Up, and Skipper says, oh, I could play that. I was like, no, you can't. So we walked down to his house, and he played that song after hearing it twice, as though he wrote it, and he was never allowed on my porch while I was practicing ever again.
When you're 14 and 15, nobody's telling you that an instrument is hard. We would go to the studio at 14 years old. He would always stay inside, you know, and see what the engineer was doing and all that stuff. And so one time he came to my mom's house, because we used to rehearse in my mom's basement. He brought this, hey man, you know, you gotta listen to it. I think it was on a cassette. It was him just playing everything.
He was practicing, rehearsing at Dell's Tire Mart. He got robbed. Either he left the door open or somebody broke in and robbed him. And I told him at that time, I said, dude, you're coming to my house. They rehearsed at our home from 10 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock at night, for 12 hours. And then, after everybody's gone, Prince went home, and he still was practicing. I went over his house one evening. I looked through the window, and Prince is down there in the basement. Practicing drums. After 12 hours of rehearsing with the band, I was going like...
The hardest thing with Prince for me was not the music. It was to get him on stage. Prince was so shy, he could not look at the audience. So he would always look back at his instrument like something was going wrong with the amp. And my job was to get him to face the people and play. He would not sing, and he would not face the audience. So that was the longest battle with him, because he could play well. We had to get him out of his shyness to deliver. And once we got him out of his shyness, you saw that, the world, once he came out of his shyness.
Tokyo の空とか眺めとか正直興味なかったけど愛おしくなってきた。ライフデザイン with リビオ。
日目の感動を作った日鉄工和不動産。
東急不動産が進めるのは緑と緑をつなぐまちづくり。渋谷周辺には約70種類もの鳥たちが住んでいるそう。緑を増やし鳥たちの住みたい環境になりました。環境に全力特急。はい、東急不動産。
美しくベネツィアで描かれる史上最大スケールの極上サスペンス。
気をつけるんだ。幸せが襲いかかってくるんです。
岸辺露伴は動かない懺悔室。
オードマニーオードマニー。まあだからクワイエットラグジュアリー系なんだけど、もうちょっとこうなんだろう、コンサバティブな感じと、アウターがちょっとこう気品がある感じ。オールドマネー。その世襲の2代目とか皇室の2代目みたいな感じ。オールドマネー。
Because all the musicians had to get in a room and look at each other from different backgrounds and make something happen. Before that, you could segregate that. In the 60s and the 70s, these musicians had different backgrounds and they had to look at each other like, okay, but we got to come up with this groove. We got to come up with this beat. You know, I was influenced by Fats Domino, although I'm a white dude. Well, I was influenced by Nelson Riddle, although I'm a brother, you know, like, so these guys, when they had to make music and culturally get together, you know, everybody got in these one rooms and played it out. The Motown musicians, all those guys, you know.
I remember when FM radio became a big deal, and that was around 1976.
AM radio and top 40 radio at that particular time, I think it was very liberating to a young person like myself.
Then I started listening to the various FM stations that were specializing in specific types of music.
There was no black radio when my career started in the mid-'80s. It was like, I wasn't definitely able to play no rap.
We had never heard of black DJ because the white radio stations were white period. But when we met Jeanette Cotton, and she said, let's get our own radio station, we decided to join her in our fight to create our first radio station. It was something that we were missing when it comes to our music. They made our music a devil music, so that was the excuse not to play it. And as we would ride south, we would hear the radio stations playing our music. We just couldn't get it here.
They had a neighborhood station in Minneapolis, KMOJ, but they were small AM station. We were able to have this station because civil rights and affirmative action said that black enclaves should be able to have broadcasting in their immediate area.
We were the radio station back in the day that made the impact on the sound of Minneapolis and Minnesota to where they came up with that Minneapolis sound. And I've been here 38, going on 39 years of the broadcasting side and watching the community from where it was to where it is today.
Another way to describe the Minneapolis sound is that there was a real interest in breaking down racial barriers and really not being labeled or pigeonholed just because you come from North Minneapolis. It doesn't mean that you have to play funk music. Prince and his peers started breaking down these barriers and combining these influences when the industry was still so segmented that it really stood out as something brand new that people hadn't really heard before. You can listen to the classic rock radio station. You can love Joni Mitchell. Prince's favorite band when he was a teenager was Grand Funk Railroad. You can bring in all of these influences and break down these walls and really make music that could appeal to all the different neighborhoods in the city.
FM 89.9 KMOJ, your community radio station. We play it first and for you. That's right. Speaking of for you, we got it right now. A little bit of Prince.
いやオールドマネーがやっぱすごい面白いよね。そのコスプレなんだってオールドマネーって2代目とか3代目の創業皇室とかなんか本当に創業家の3代目が着るようなファッションっていうオールドマネーだから。
By the mid-1970s, the heightened sense of black pride sweeping the country had begun to translate into a different type of soul music. Funk had officially arrived, spearheaded by bands like Sly and the Family Stone, Parliament, and Rufus, featuring Chaka Khan.
That's when I met Stevie Wonder. That was good. Those are magical moments. Truly magical.
As the lead vocalist for Rufus, Chaka Khan had achieved 4 gold singles, 4 gold albums, 2 platinum-selling albums, and 10 Grammy Awards over a continued career. She once received a phone call from Sly and the Family, asking her if she felt like coming down and meeting him at Record Plant Studios, which was over an hour drive in Sausalito, California.
So I walk into the studio. I go to the door. I look in. It's just one person all by themselves. There was no engineer, nobody. Just him. And he's playing guitar. So I asked him, I said,
キャンキャンだとコンサバになっちゃう。オールドマネーはコンサバティブでもない。ちょっとモードに近い。クワイエットラグジュアリーに
and
近
then he
い。
put on his Sly Stone voice. He said, I'm the one that calls
キャンキャンはコンサバじゃん。まあなんか型通りじゃん。型通りじゃない。古着とかも全然着たりする。だから本当に両家のいいとこの家の人ってプレッピー
I
の。
just did that because I really love you. I love your music. I just wanted to meet you. So I just really wanted to meet you.
Inspired by the funk and soul acts of the late 1970s,
ゆとりはストリート系じゃん。
adventurous sense of
全然
fashion
オールドマネー
helped
じゃ
to
ない。
create a level of flash and style.
でコンサバティブなんだけど、キャンキャンとかああいう JJ じゃなくて尖りは一切ない。上質な感じ。
In a black band back then. That's why Prince dressed the way he did, because that's the era we came up in.
Despite being raised in a strict Christian home, the young prince chose to harness the power of sexuality and create a sensational and sometimes shocking stage show.
It was all part of the act, and it was meant to be provocative. It was all part of the sexuality of it all. I can remember being screamed at by women in the audience, telling me to leave him alone, but it was my job to kiss him, and I thought, good for me. So sad for you.
I've been in the business close on 53 years or something like that. I started in England in 62. So I remember walking into the studio and I knew that we were going to get Jimi Hendrix to come in. I got a phone call from the downstairs office. It was this lovely woman. And she said, oh, yeah, there's this American chappie and he's got this big hair, you might have heard of him, Jimi Hendrix. I said, yeah. Well, you do all that weird shit anyway, so why don't you do him? And that's literally how I got the gig to do Mr. Hendrix.
ヒッピー風じゃんそれ。地味変。まあヒッピー部分もまた来ると思うんだよね。トレンドはやっぱりなんか一巡するから。やっぱ60年代70年代ブームは結構来る。なんか10年に1回は絶対来るから。ボヘミボトムふわーってしたフロアパンツみたいなあれ絶対60年代やっぱ70年代だとジーンズ50年代と70年代はジーンズとかやっぱこうリベラルな時代民主党政権になるとフレアパンツが流行る
Joni Mitchell, I mean, of all the artists that he cited as influential to him throughout his career, she came up again and again. He talks about her in the Ballad of Dorothy Parker. He actually quotes a little bit of Help Me in that song. Her music, I think, seeps in, even if you can't hear it necessarily, I think her use of colors and chord progression and just the way that she constructed her songs was so deeply influential that I think it's baked into pretty much everything Prince did.
do their son. I said, he's smoking. But he was not playing.
いや、オールド、でもオールドマネーって言い方がやっぱ面白いよね。コスプレになったんだ。ファッションになっちゃったんだ。そうだ、いわゆる2代目とか3代目。本当のね、創業曲。
However, the Queen of Funk's 1984 reworking won Prince a Grammy for the best R&B song. Since then, the two have toured together and remained close friends.
I've known him his entire professional life. And we worked on and off, in that whole time. We did a lot of different things together.
I listened to all kinds of music when I was young. I always said that one day I was going to play all kinds of music and not be judged on the color of my skin, but the quality of my work.
Prince had a really interesting take on the city because he was moving all over the place. And that really opened up, I think, his mind to a lot of different worlds. In order to get gigs and to play at concerts outside of North Minneapolis, they had to learn top 40 hits because they wanted to appeal to white kids. So I think it was a little bit of a taste for him, an interest in this kind of rock music, but it was also a survival element. You know, there's a quote that when he was signing for Warner Brothers, he specifically told the head of the label, "Don't make me black. I want to be presented as an artist that can appeal to everybody. Like if I want to be successful, if I want to have this wide audience, I'm going to have to adapt to their tastes as well as mine." And he had this vision that he had some kind of key that he was going to try to figure out how to decode that and break through. You know, we see that in the fact that he was one of the first black people to be featured on MTV. He was one of the first black artists to be played on top 40 radio in the Twin Cities.
In 1977, Prince signed a six-figure recording contract with Warner Brothers, which at the time was reputed to be one of the largest contracts ever for a new act. And Prince was allowed to produce his own music.
The guitarist right there, he brought home Prince Controversy out. And I was upstairs, and he put that on, and I think it hit Controversy. Bam, bam, oh, wow. I was like, oh man, you got an earthquake in Detroit? What is that?
Every hour there was a new hit song. And it was nothing like you've ever heard before in the fashion and the hairstyles.
In spite of the stage fright that he experienced as a young man, once Prince got over that, his newfound confidence enabled him to test the boundaries in every direction.
Male, female, gay, straight, shoes, your tones, the colors that you're allowed to wear, the colors that you're expected to wear, the makeup, all these ways that you're supposed to be. Young black kid, Minneapolis. He broke all the boundaries.
In the 60s, they called it unisex, part male, part female. High-tech fashion with an equal dose of both genders. Now the buzzword is androgyny, or as this man might be described, androgynous. Videos of Annie Lennox of the Eurythmics and Boy George of the Culture Club all prove that androgyny is not in his week in Minneapolis. Androgynous. Male, part female. High-tech fashion with an equal dose of both genders. Now the buzzword is androgyny, or as this man might be described, androgynous. Videos of Annie Lennox of the Eurythmics and Boy George of the Culture Club all prove that androgyny, if not intriguing, is surely profitable. In his week in Minneapolis, Prince has raked in more than $1.5 million in ticket sales. Today's final performance sold out with 17,700 fans. After all the protest about Prince's lyrics, His Purple Majesty organized a food drive, which is expected to bring in 45,000 pounds of food. Why do the kids do it? Simple, because Prince asked them.
I remember being the first station to play it. We were the first to put it out there. When you're talking about a song called Soft and Wet, what does that mean? There's that sexuality. They were so afraid of it because they didn't understand him. Because radio was supposed to be when it came to people of color, it was just straight soul. Radio stations were afraid of sexuality because they didn't understand it. And so when you got an artist that most radio stations won't take that chance on it, all you have to do is play it and then play it enough to where somebody else hears it. Now you got somebody, you're hearing your song on the radio. It's like, wow.
From music to fashion to gender norms, punk or funk, black or white, gay or straight. He was willing to go where few had dared to go before him. To the delight of his fans, he blatantly harnessed his sexual energy and used it as a way to gain attention, often to the dismay of conservatives.
Today, Dan and Steve Peters took their case before the St. Paul City Council. They cited examples of sexual lyrics in Prince's music and asked the City Council to appoint a bipartisan committee to rate the rock concerts to be held at the Civic Center in order to give parents a better understanding of what kind of music their children would be hearing. They also suggested the council cancel the Prince concerts altogether.
Despite the backlash, Prince continued to gain in popularity. And in October of 1982, he released his breakthrough album, featuring the
いや
title
オールド
track
マネーは面白いんじゃない？
1999.
いや
This
結構ね
changed
トレンドっていうかなんか10年ぐらいオールドマネーになるその本当に皇室とかその企業の創業家の2
It
代
was
目
his
3代目
first
みたいな
top 10 album on the Billboard charts, and it was the 5th best-selling album of 1983. The
日本だと誰だろうでも
1999
まあ
album
東宝じゃ
would
ない
go on to sell more than 4 million copies. The music videos for both 1999 and Little Red Corvette were significant as two of the first videos by a black artist to receive heavy rotation on the newly launched music video channel, MTV. On June 25th, 1984, Prince raised the bar and
寝ていい
released his first feature film
聞
along with
聞
his
いてるけど
sixth
聞きたくない
album
寝ていい
titled Purple Rain. This was the second album to feature his band, The Revolution. It sold 1.5 million copies its first
全
week
然分
alone.
かってないじゃん
It was the first time Prince would include live recordings on one of his releases. Some of the tracks were recorded live from a show at the First Avenue Club in Minneapolis. In many ways, the club was to become as famous as the album itself. And to this day, fans continue to flock to this former Greyhound bus depot turned music venue. And Rolling Stone magazine named it as one of the top rock clubs of all time.
There was a lot of excitement in the premiere of that film.
And I just happened to be sitting right behind it. And I think I was at like 30 or 40 rows up. I just remember he was like scrunched down into his seat as far as he could go the entire movie. So I guess it was hard for him to watch himself.
He was scared to death. He was shy as spikes of the power. And a lot of people misread that. People were frightened, you know, incredibly shy, and he's very insulated and protected. Yet built some armor around himself.
Do you find him mysterious at all?
At times, yes. Very much so. He's a verbally, I would call him a verbally conservative man, very private.
Thanks to the global success of both the album and the movie, Prince built his dream studio called Paisley Park, a recording studio of mythic proportions. At the height of his fame and success, Prince retreated back into the safety of his new created palace. And it was behind the walls of this studio fortress where he would record for the rest of his career.
My name is Fred Evans. I worked for the Minnesota Vikings for 23 years. And this woman came up to me and she said, I think I have a client that, you know, that may be interested in you working for them. And then she took me out to Paisley Park. I sat in this kitchen area and they left me in there by myself. For I bet you it was an hour. I bet you it was an hour. I sat there, just sat there. Then all of a sudden, Prince walked in. He looked at me and walked out. Doesn't say a word. Does not say one word. I just go, damn. These other people show up.
拓郎2人がいいねなんか応援したくなる優しそう
I said, what?
いやネタがちゃんと面白かったよ僕は全然お笑いは否定しないよなんかこう和芸のこの なんていうの、序列、ヒエラルキ
We can
ー
use it tomorrow morning.
上って感じ。
And I was like, wow. This was doing the whole time when he was a symbol. So he didn't have a
それを
name.
やっていくと崩壊していくだろうがよ、マーケット
And I said, if I'm going to call you sir, I'd like you to call me sir. He said, fine. We'll both sir. I think he got a kick out of that, you know, because I wasn't really that passive kind of guy, you know. You couldn't be passive with him. You had to be on it. There was no such thing as hours. You showed up and you worked until he was done. And he was never done. The stories are true about him not sleeping. I don't know how he did it. But, you know, he expected you to do it too. But you're doing the business side at 8 a.m. in the morning. And then he wants to record at 3 a.m. in the morning and wants you there.
The wear and tear on me, on my body, is nothing compared to what guys like Prince go through because they're dancing.
あるよね。いや、同志社とかね、講義ノートっつって。あれは関西だけだよね。講義ノート屋さんって。本当に同志社の真ん前にあるの。しかも、黙認してるからさ。
He would do a show, and after the show, he'd book a club and go and play 3 or 4 hours. His manager isn't saying do it for PR. This guy doing it because he just loves doing it. The guy was relentless.
People would come up, just want to say hello, just shake his hand or get an autograph. You see, that's why there was not a lot of interaction.
People love to talk about him like he's this alien, like he got beamed down to earth to, you know, grace us with his presence. He didn't see himself that way, and I didn't find him to be that way at all. I found him to be a totally normal person.
There was something very, very valuable he needs to protect, you know, within himself. There are very few people that he would be alone with.
Although Prince's shyness would continue to plague him, there was another side.
いや、あんまりオールドマネーっぽくないね。
As a musician and as a band leader, he became
なんか批判を全然含まないのが面白いの、オールドマネー。
He was able to rehearse for hours and hours and hours, where someone else
加えただけじゃない
talented might get bored and want to go hang out with their friends.
You know, his band was petrified. I watched him fire 3 or 4 musicians easy.
そのショーオフブランドじゃない。ロエベみたいな感じじゃない。そのブランドロゴとかも派手にしない。上質なでベージュとかグレーとか。エルメスだってね、そうだったけど、ちょっと成り上がりっぽくなっちゃった。みんなが使うようになっちゃった。ブルネロックチネみたいな。ロピアノ。本当に高いよでも。コートで400万とかするね。
Are you freaking crazy? You don't knock things out of people's mouths because you don't agree with what they're doing. I will mop this restaurant with your heat.
So we used to have this, stuff like that. You know, we had those fights.
I think there's sort of seeming our friendship somewhat. It's just a little bit sad.
You hear stories about him finding the band for being late, missing a lick, missing a beat, or any of that stuff. That's true.
You know, Lisa Coleman said he was Machiavellian in reference to how he sort of humiliated Morris Day at the time he was inventing Morris Day. It was during Purple Rain, but he made sure people see him humiliate Morris Day and literally bring him to tears.
Well, I don't consider it a rivalry. We're just in the same business and we have the same ultimate goal.
Which is?
I don't know.
And he decided he was going to break his silence. You know, and I called him as the music editor of Rolling Stone saying he's going to talk. Can you get to Minneapolis as fast as possible? In front of my folks' house is a stretch limousine. We just drove around for 3 hours. We were on the way to pick up his father. I knew his father very well. This man had basically destroyed him. And yet he was so in love with him. But as soon as he got close to his father's house, it dropped each level, you know. And by the time we pulled it in, his father was sitting standing by a tree. They tell me it was a son looking for approval, and he's explaining why his dad could never say he loved him. And John Nelson was one of the most narcissistic people I've ever met, and I truly believe he thought it was going to be John Nelson's son who taught us.
I
I met Prince in 2007. He called me after the Super Bowl. I picked up and I'm like, hi, and he's like, hi, it's Prince. And I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, I'm gonna fly in Sheila E. from Vegas and we're gonna jam at the record plant tomorrow. We jammed for like 4 hours. He said, you play one of your ideas, I play one of mine. He said to me, your record should be like knocking down a door, the first record. You have to come out with one that's just like knocking down a door. It was definitely like inspiring. He was definitely a big innovator. The way that he sort of manifested everything into reality, that's amazing, you know what I mean? Because he really sent that clear message out to the universe.
He just loves music. Master like a real music fan, like he meant it, you know, it wasn't just him making records and going on concert, like he really adored.
あの子は貴族、スタイリングがダメ。あれ、三越のおばちゃんじゃん。富裕層コスプレみたいな。オールドマネーはもうちょっとこうナチュラルで今っぽい。やっぱ今っぽい。ブラウン系を取り入れる。あれ、三越のおばちゃんじゃん。だから日本人のやっぱ富裕層とかアリストクラットのイメージがなんか全然ずれてる感じ。
The difficulty in mastering, you know, a wide range of instruments requires a great deal of dedication. You can see him on a Monday behind the keyboard, but then by Wednesday it's guitar, back to the keyboard, over to the drums.
I mean, he was an amazing bass player, drummer, you know, kind of multi-instrumentalist. I just knew that from jamming with him the first time. I didn't know that, actually. And he went over the drum kit and started playing, we're jamming, and I was like, wow, like, it's freaking awesome.
He's like Stevie Wonder, you know? He had a lot of music in him.
He talked a lot throughout his life about having this almost curse of constantly needing to get the music in his mind out onto a recording so that it wasn't clouding up his brain.
If you had to pick one thing that he enjoyed doing, it was all of it with the guitar leading the charge.
Yeah, because he reminds me a bit of like Hendrix and a bit of Santana. When he was playing, he just meant it, you know what I mean? So every note he meant.
Play that introduction to the garbage choir. In 2 bars, it defies description. It also defies the attempt. I brought that up to Prince directly. And he grinned, you know, he's kind of a shy guy. I prodded him a little bit. He said, well, he said, the truth be known, he said, I'm still trying to learn.
Whenever he played a solo, you could find me at the side of the stage like a freaking groupie.
As the city of Minneapolis continued to evolve, so did the Paisley Park complex, located about 20 miles outside of the city. This fabled 24-hour party recording studio residence of Prince became a living graceland to millions of his fans. For some, Paisley Park became a place where they could go to experience firsthand some of the legendary purple magic.
My mother and I were on our way to see a movie, and we heard on the radio that Paisley Park was going to be open for an event. And so my mom and I looked at each other, and we just turned the car around, didn't go to the movie, went home, got ready, and went out to Paisley. And saw an incredible show, watching him play the piano, and just could not believe it.
There is this worldwide network of people that are connected over their love of Prince. Hashtag Purple Army. That is where you find people celebrating his music, finding guidance in his lyrics about focusing on love and community and building up something positive. That is, I think, what is going to be kind of the gift that keeps on giving.
Prince would open his doors for a week or whatever that was. Small groups, maybe about 20 or 30 people would sit literally Indian style on the floor in different rooms throughout Paisley Park, and he would come in and literally sit amongst them and let them ask him any questions that they wanted to ask.
People from Japan showed up, people from Italy. If they were given more than 3 days notice, people booked flights and they were here. So it was so cool to see so many different cultures coming to Minneapolis to just enjoy his music.
I went out there first time was 1995. I was 18. I really didn't know a whole lot about the world, and all of a sudden I found myself in this kind of space where Prince is there, and there's a DJ, and there's music, and it's just, wow, this is amazing. And this place is something special. We ended up going back again and again and again. Found out that this stuff was open to the public, concerts would happen.
Anyone who ever said that Disney is the most magical place on earth has obviously never been to Paisley Park.
Never seen so many people under the same roof that had so much love.
And there was no liquor served out there. It wasn't that type of vibe. It was a natural high. And if you allowed yourself to go there, you could. And there were no cell phones allowed, so there was none of this, and, you know, taking a selfie and filming him. And so you were forced to
be in the moment.
Be in the moment.
Which is where he lived.
Ain't no artist did that ever. That was the Prince community live in color, all at our mecca of Paisley Park. Getting to meet one another, knocking down boundaries, blurring everything. If you thought this person was this online, nope, this is this person.
There were periods of time that he was opening up the park for parties 2 or 3 times a week.
Prince loved his fans. You know, he just wanted them to love him the way that he wanted them to. They'd have these Hollywood parties for the celebrities. Just ridiculous, because you'd have Justin Timberlake on the keyboards, and you'd have Adam Levine of Maroon 5 playing guitar, and you'd have Matthew McConaughey in the corner playing the bongos. And there was Prince just leading everything, and sometimes you have Stevie Wonder come up and jam.
I got a message that basically said, "We're having something tonight, come by." And one of the side doors opened, and her dancers just started walking in. Then Madonna shows up. And then he decided it was time for him to perform. She just sat on the stage and just looked up at him in awe, like, wow. You know, like it felt like he was playing specifically for her.
When you walk into a place where the smells are specific smells that are to invite you to relax, where you're not allowed certain electronics that rob you of those types of energies. When you walk in and you see the words love everywhere, there's no hard corners in the place where your eyes flow, everything is allowed a chance to flow in the space. All of that matters. All of that is, he knows, this creates a whole experience for your energy to be able to be reached in a better way.
They would tell stories how Prince saved their life, or how Prince changed their life, and how the music changed their story, or how it was the soundtrack to their lives. And so he got a sense of what he did for the fans, as well as what the fans did for him.
There was one night where there was supposed to be a party at Paisley, and I came out there and set up. Ended up not being a party, they canceled it, and it ended up just being Prince and I sitting in the MPG Music Club, listening to this mix that I made for him. We were just sitting on the edge of the stage, talking about the way music was going and how live performances were changing. I'll never forget that he said to me, he said, like, what is it going to turn into? Just a guy on the stage with a laptop playing music?
みんなすごいよね、ジャンプは。まあこち亀がずっとすごいよね。やっぱジャンプはでもこち亀なんじゃない？本当に情報浮きよね。
The price of CDs has skyrocketed while the quality of music has plummeted. And as long as middlemen create the means by which the consumer consumes, this will never change. The problem is not a complex one. The solution is simple.
Prince continued to discover new ways of distributing his music outside the traditional norms of selling in a store. Selling directly to the fans was one such way. The support of his fan community provided him with the ability to retain a much higher portion of his sales, cutting out the middleman altogether.
First guy to sell his music online. The first guy to call out the record labels and, say it's not fair. And everybody looked at him like he was crazy. And then years later, they were like, no, you were right.
So he wanted to sell Hidden on Phase 2, which ended up being his last studio album. He wanted to sell that through the fans instead of going through conventional channels. Some people were like, you should have a website and sell them there. And he goes, you do it, I'll sign up and buy a copy from you. And I tweeted him, if you want to do an NPG-MC reboot, I'd be happy to swing by. And he said, why not run it from your house this time? He wanted those who loved him to benefit from his music instead of these larger companies. Through social media, I became involved with various Prince things. One morning in October of 2013, Prince tweeted, who wants the funk or something like that. So of course, a lot of people replied and provided an email address. I did that, and about 5 minutes later, I received a song. It's called The Sweeter She Is. So when I heard it, I was like, what? Like, I have to send this to people? Like, nobody else has heard this? What a gift. It's amazing.
The world knows Purple Rain Prince, and they know those songs, those hits, but he was a whole person, and he was so much more than just that. People that he chose to work with, creatives, like artists and such, I think those are amazing people to tell stories about, because he saw something in them. There was something about their art that captured him, whether it was buying art from people because it connected in some way with his
そんなこ
spirit.
とをだからもうなんかフジテレビ日枝久志さんかいなんかレベルの本当にずっとレベルの低いやつらだねずーっとドブ板選挙みたいな感じやなフジテレビの本当ポンキッキーズとかねすごいのにね深夜やってた高城さんとかさ全然バカにしてないそのバカにされる時はバカにしてないの三谷幸喜も言ってそうだったのフジテレビが俺たちの得意技だよとかって言うと確実に狂ってくるそれは成り上がりの特徴だよ
He said, without math, there's no universe. No universe, no artist. My boyfriend had bought me a guitar. I love classic rock. He said either learn how to play it or make it into art. I had broken a mirror that had crayons melted onto it. So I was like, oh, why don't I just put these crayons onto the guitar? So I glued them all up and I sent it to Prince. So in October, I got a message from his manager saying, how much for this?
This you may have heard of. This is the original Black Album. Barely played. I have played it. I started collecting Prince records. I got into this world and I started meeting all these bootleggers and all these people, and some guys said, hey, do you want to design some Prince CDs? And I was like, oh my God, design a Prince CD, that's a dream. And I was 16 and I didn't really understand the full concept of the bootlegging thing. I knew it wasn't Warner Brothers putting it out. July 1988. My dad calls me in the middle of the night. Oh, that shorty guy's there. I think he's at the club because his friend owned the club. You want to come to the club? He's like, yeah, there's a girl with him that's dancing with him, and she has like one leg.
ジャーナリズムを勉強してきたらいいんじゃないジャーナリズムですらないから自分たちの身内をで見事にね電子とかサブスクは朝日が一番やばいねテレ朝が本当に朝日新聞本丸もそうだし本当にやばいね視聴率 4% とかなんだよ全然見てないからさ本当に 15年前とかみんな見てないっつってもテレビ見てたけど、本当にもう誰も見てないんだもん。こうなると思ったけど、見る機会なくない？だってテレビ。テレ朝が一番やばいよね。いやいや、増収増益じゃないよ。利益率が全然ない。
I've been making music for a long time, inspired by Prince, and in the past year, I put together an electronic record that mixes some of the poetry that I use with analog instruments, some modes.
ついにだから日テレ系がその読売中京ホールディングスっていう日テレ放送持ち株会社で経営統合した札幌テレビと中京テレビと読売テレビ、あと福岡放送、もう地方局はね生き残れないからさ、誰が見ても飽きが初めての再編。
Prince definitely has some amazing lyrics. I think that he became a stronger lyricist.
なんだけど分かったでしょ、テレビ局とか電波同士で持ち合いをしてて再編したところでサブスクリプションを作んないと意味がないからさ、 UNEXT の一択だよ。もう UNEXT が買収していくの一択だよ。あれはアベマか、ね、とかレミノかダゾーンとかだからネットフリックスは買えないから、外資規制があるから買えないから、 UNEXT だったら認定放送持ち株会社は取り外せば別に買収はできるからでいいよ、売んなくてもいいけど潰れていくだけだよ。もう単なるワンオブゼムになっちゃうね。遅かったね、時代の変化。早くね、ホリエモンに売っとけばよかったのにね。
brand basically. You see that just coursing through his whole life, that this love of this place.
The thing that we instill is that each class has to help teach the next class. And to see them kids do that year after year for each other, they all did that for each other. They gave back what was given them, you know, so I'm proud of that because they learned to give back.
Music education was something that was really important to Prince. I talked to him directly about that. He was quietly funneling a lot of money into North Minneapolis organizations that supported education in schools, donating instruments, making sure that kids had access. That was a huge thing. And I think he really got a lot out of the experience of going to places like the Way. That was so important to him that he really wants other people to have that same opportunity. I think he just was doing everything that he could to pay that forward.
You had a place to go to where you could come back and sing the praises of where you was raised and how you was raised. And, you know, some of the notes I played weren't notes from me or anybody other than just from where I was. You know, I'm playing at the Way.
The things that came out after he passed away of how many people he was helping, paying medical bills, donating to churches, that was going on for decades. For whatever reason, I think we didn't want that to be known. So I think it's kind of great that it's organically come to the surface in a very sincere way.
We would stop the tour buses and he would get off the bus and give us stacks of money to just go out and hand it to the homeless that wherever he saw. And he was just a giver. And he would always tell us, what can you do to change your community? What can I do to empower you to help you change your community?
We're at a place now in this country where we're going to have to work together and stop looking at each other's affiliation,
right,
and start taking care of each other. I mean, it's desperate times.
Well, you probably don't know this, but this is not the first time. I mean, Prince does a lot for charity. I'm not going to say what it is. I'm just going to say that you do it.
So many lives he affected. From the way he inspired artists and musicians alike, to the ways he gave back to the community. Prince never turned his back.
Prince has left behind the inspiration for musicians to be able to create and just be who they want to be your own person. Because as an artist, we all have a voice, it's very individual.
He was just a prodigy. You know, he was, a gift from God. He left a legacy that will live on forever.
You know, there's a difference in a person when what they're doing is their calling. Something special happens. You can see it. They appear differently. They change. They become untouchable, beautiful.
You know, a lot of people ask the question, did he know that he was loved? And I
say soundingly yes, because we told him every chance we got. And I sent him an email a month before he passed just thanking him for everything he did for the community and for trying to uplift as many people as he could, even though obviously you can't reach everybody.
In the process of his leaving, a part of me is still going. As a friend, who's not related to you, but he's still your brother.
We have to really look at death as part of life. It is part of life. Just go to a different dimension. It continues on. And I know that he's somewhere. I know his spirit is alive. Always with his God.
I thank God that we could tell our own story, because when Prince died, no one came to the real community. No one talked to real people that was really in the life in the beginning that made him who he was. So I want to thank you for this interview, because no one has asked us anything about our favorite son. I grieved real hard for 3 days. I cried for 3 days. Because your memory is not that he made it as a superstar. My memory is that little kid.
I loved him so much. Everybody loved him so much. But he wouldn't let everybody love him. That was where this disconnect was. He couldn't take it. You know, and that really, really, really makes me sad. It's sad that he missed that.
本当に
He gave so much love on the stage, encore after encore, show after show, after party after after party. Everything that you guys gave him, he gave it right back on the stage. I said, so I know when he got to the gates of heaven, he'll be able to tell God, I left it all on the stage. Everything you gave me, I left it on the stage.
The fact that this had to happen, that we had to lose one of our greatest musicians, one of our greatest, ambassadors of art, it's just a really big passing for us.
As radio changed, your voice stayed the same. New lotus flowers grew. From your Paisley playground, the sun, moon, and stars were at your whim. You gave us the future of soul in 2010. And the rainbow children danced.